let's talk about how to build a custom GPT. Custom GPTs can be thought of as customized assistants for handling specific repeatable tasks. They're powered with instructions, knowledge, and actions. The way you get to custom GPTs is by going over to your sidebar and then clicking Explore GPTs. Your window will open a GPT store, which is a great place to explore GPTs that have been created by others. Your store might look different than mine, depending on the access level your organization has provisioned. Third-party GPTs might actually be turned off in your instance. To search for a GPT that's been shared with me, I can either enter in the name of the GPT or find GPTs from each category. To create one, I click on the black Create button in the top right corner. You'll then be taken to this page. There are two options for creating a GPT. You can either engage in a conversation with the GPT builder in the Create tab, or you can manage the build directly in the Configure tab. I always like to use the Configure tab because I feel like it gives me a really high level of control over the instructions. The instructions are the most important aspect of creating a great GPT. Let's see how this works. So I'm thinking of a task that I do over and over again every week as a third grade teacher. One thing I do every week is I create a weekly newsletter and I send it home to parents. So I want to create a custom GPT that allows me to create that newsletter every week with just giving ChatGPT a few inputs, and then it always has the same format, the same type of output, the same tone. So I'm going to first name my GPT. So I'll call this the Classroom Newsletter Helper. And then I'm going to add a description so that I can remember what this does. So I will say this GPT creates weekly newsletters for parents of my third grade students. And then the most important part is this instructions tab. So I'm actually just going to paste in instructions that I've already drafted just to save some time. What I want to do is give the GPT some context, instructions, and then the format that I want it to respond in. So you'll see these little markdown indicators. We've noticed that GPTs respond much better to instructions that are created in Markdown. So adding in bolding, italics, and line breaks can really help make sure that the ChatGPT follows your instructions. So I'm going to say that the context for this GPT is that it supports third grade teachers by drafting professional, engaging, and informative parent newsletters for my classroom. And then I'm going to give it step-by-step instructions and ask the GPT to follow the steps below. So first, going to ask the user for updates, then draft the newsletter using those updates, including those highlights and upcoming events, and then create that text in an email format. I also want the GPT to offer versions for print in case I want to print the newsletter this week. I want to make sure that the GPT is always suggesting optional family engagement activities that are related to the current topics that I gave it. And then as a last step, after outputting the newsletter, I want ChatGPT to generate an image of the week based on what we learned. And this image should be black and white like a coloring book so that the parent can print it out and allow the child to color it at home. In the response, I want ChatGPT to use Markdown so that the newsletter is formatted clearly with headings for each section. And then I can add in some examples of conversation starters to kick off the GPT. So I'll say, help me draft this week's newsletter. Just like a regular chat, I can provide the custom GPT with some knowledge. So I might want to upload files of an example of a newsletter that was really good to have ChatGPT reference. I might want to upload a list of our classroom rules and regulations to remind parents, or if I want to upload, any additional information about school policies, I can do that here. And then whatever I upload, I want to make sure I put in the instructions where and when ChatGPT should reference that document. And then finally, I want to give ChatGPT some instructions about what capabilities it should expect to use. So I definitely know that I want it to generate images. I don't know yet about Canvas or web search. I'll keep those turned on for now. but I definitely know that I'm not going to need ChatGPT to interpret any code or analyze data for this specific use case. Finally, I might want to create an action. This is a more advanced use of a custom GPT, but this allows you to connect this GPT to third-party systems. So I feel pretty good about this so far. I'm going to go over and hit create. And then I can actually share this with other people in my workspace. So a good use case for this is if there's a lot of third grade teachers that use the same format, maybe I want to share my instructions so that they can take advantage of the GPT that I created. So I'm going to add my coworker. And I'm going to say that he can edit the GPT. So if he wants to make changes, he can, and it will show the changes that he made. And I'll hit update. And now this brings me to my GPT. I know that I'm using a custom GPT because it says it right here. Normally where the model picker is where the name of the GPT is. So when you're in a custom GPT, this is a specific experience for the GPT instructions that you've given ChatGPT. If I want to exit out of it, I would just start a new chat with the regular ChatGPT model. So I'm going to test out this GPT just to make sure that it's working the way that I expected. So I'm going to say, help me draft this week's newsletter. And ChatGPT will respond per my instructions to ask me about updates from this week. So I've attached the lesson plan for the week. So I'm going to upload the lesson that I taught this week in a PDF. And then I also want ChatGPT to remind parents about the field trip on Friday to the So I have attached the lesson plan for the week. I also want to remind parents about the field trip on Friday to the Museum of Natural History. I want to include the address. I don't feel like looking it up right now, so I'll have ChatGPT look that up and include it, and then remind them that they need to pack a lunch. So let's send that and see what ChatGPT comes up with. And you might see that it is telling you what it's going to do before it does it, and then it will start drafting the newsletter. So I'll scroll down and see what it came up with. So you see, I told it to put it in an email, so it's starting with a greeting. I told it to have a warm and friendly tone, so it's very playful, it's very friendly. It gave a summary of what we're learning, and then one of the sections references the field trip, so it knows that this Friday is April 11th, where we're going, and then the address to the museum. And then it's also going to ask if I want any other modifications. So I might want to translate this into Spanish so that there's a Spanish version as well. And then it's saying, do you want me to suggest a family activity? So I'll say, suggest a family activity, and then generate an image. The family activity that it suggested is one that is related to the lesson plan that I gave it, which is great. And then it also generated that image. So the image is called Me as a Helper in My Community. I can include this with my newsletter, so I can either print this out for parents or they can print it out on their own. And then this is just another fun activity for children to do over the weekend. So you can see that if this is a task that I need to do every week, it's much faster for me to give ChatGPT the instructions one time, tell it exactly what I want it to look like, and then all I have to do every week is navigate to that custom GPT, which is on my sidebar, and add in the information that it's asking for, and then it will generate one of those really high quality, consistent newsletters every week.